Hello, everybody. I see that Eliana and Stephen are here, so we're going to get started, but participants might still kind of trickle in as we speak, which is fine. So my name is Yana Butuzova. I'm Connect chair, and I will be facilitating this session featuring Minga, Peru, and Turimiquire Foundation. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much, Eliana, for joining us today. And now they will make a brief presentation for you all. And then after the presentation, you will have an opportunity to ask speakers questions until the session ends. So there will be another session after this one. And then you can either stay in this room or leave and select another room. So today with us, we have Stephen Blumstein and Eliana Alias. Stephen Blumstein comes from Turimiquire Foundation, and he's gonna present to you all first, and then Eliana Alias, who comes from Minga, Peru, will present to you second. Oh, I also see that we have Alvaro Gonzalez from Minga, Peru. So let's start with Turimiquire Foundation. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me here. My name is Stephen Blumstein, and I'm president of the Turimiquire Foundation, and which offers community-based family planning and rural education and development services in rural northeastern Venezuela. And as many of you may have heard, Venezuela is a country which is suffering kind of chronic humanitarian crisis, where many of these basic social services simply are not available. So I'd like to put up some slides because I think that's the best way I can tell our story. I'm going to start that now. Hang on a sec. So are these slides up? Can you see? So our story is unusual in that we started grassroots in the 70s. We were a small group of college-educated, non-professional North Americans who, in the spirit of the 1960s, we had moved to Venezuela in the early 1970s to practice tropical fruit farming and live close to nature. And of course, what happened, we soon became very involved with the poor rural populations with whom we lived and worked. And what we saw in those days, rural campesino women frequently had up to 8 living children by the time they were 30 years old. They often started giving birth as young as 14 or even younger, and often including several miscarriages or infant deaths in the process. High levels of maternal and infant morbidity and mortality were, and in fact still are, a fact of life. Women went for years and years without having a menstrual period, having one pregnancy following another. It was what we called a reproductive treadmill and a serious, vicious circle of poverty, really. So when we asked these families what we could do to help, the women overwhelmingly asked for family planning for themselves and for their daughters. They were very clear that this was the most urgent and empowering assistance that we could offer them. So we started to help out of our own resources. But then our friend and neighbor in the valley, Brunilde, died in 1994 from postpartum hemorrhaging after giving birth to her 7th child at the age of 31 in a small mud hut 2 walking hours from the nearest road. She bled out while being carried down rocky foot trails and across mountain rivers in a blood-drenched hammock in a desperate effort to attempt to get her to the road and then to the local hospital in time to save her life. Her newborn died shortly thereafter. And that became our wake-up call to do something more, to start our foundation. Once we got going and began to offer family planning, first everyone in our valley, then in neighboring valleys, the demand was just huge. It was tremendous, word by mouth. We grew very quickly. We quickly learned our second lesson, that once women and families gain control of their fertility, they immediately turn to education as the next step in improving the lives of their families. So parents who might be completely illiterate themselves are passionate about giving their children the best possible future through school. They know that education is the key to their children's future and to developing their community. And so this is how we evolved our 4-step recipe for community development, which we call our recipe for a thriving community. Family planning, first. Offer women and men the ability to control their fertility to have the children they really want to have. Second, education. Offer families real educational opportunities for their children. Third, community. Support and build infrastructure and sustainable livelihood. And fourth, humanitarian aid to provide critical assistance for those who fall through the cracks, the poorest of the poor. So here's our results, some of our results in brief through 2022. We now work throughout our state of Sucre, and often women come to us from neighboring states. We've offered 71,000 and more women and their families safe, reliable family planning. And that amounts to almost 240,000 couple years of protection, the metric by which USAID measures family planning achievement. We have 80,600 participants in reproductive health workshops. It's like family-based, community-based sex ed courses teaching young people about their sexuality and their reproductive health. And we increasingly practice humanitarian medical services. We've had over 6,800 other services in primary and secondary healthcare as the situation in Venezuela continues to deteriorate. We have hundreds of student graduates from high school and a few going on to college with the foundation's support. And some other community activities too, you can see briefly on the list, but we can't really go over them all. So how do we do this? Well, we feel we have an efficient and replicable service model. We operate always on a shoestring budget. We do not build new infrastructure. We always partner with existing public and private facilities. Our service team is 100% Venezuelan and 95% women, ranging from medical professionals, doctors, nurses, sociologists, social workers, educators, all the way to campesinas, rural women in the field. And we practice social marketing. All services are offered at way below market cost, but no one is turned away if we can help. Even the poorest are given the help they need if we can possibly do it. So here's Marcella in pink. We're showcasing her here. She is one of our earliest and longtime staff. She started as one of our first high school scholarship students, one of our first college graduates, now a certified employed public school teacher who coordinates our education and family planning programs in where we all started. An example of what this kind of empowerment can offer and across generations. Finally, I'd like to say that there are millions and millions of women around the world. It's hard to know really how many, and hundreds of thousands still in Venezuela, who do not have access to adequate family planning and cannot control their fertility in what is often a patriarchal environment. So I believe this is a human rights issue, really a question of freedom, of empowering people to freely decide their own reproductive destiny. Thank you.
Thank you. Alvaro and Eliana, please start.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Anna. We are very grateful to have the honor to talk and speak and share about the amazing work that women in the Amazon and men are doing with the support of Minga Peru. It's an honor for us, and we thank you for that. So, the roots of Minga Peru. Minga is a Quechua word for an Andean practice that is more than 3,000 years old. Minga is when all members of a community get together to do collective work, such as building bridges and storing seeds for the winter. In the Mingas, everyone participates and everyone benefits. Minga is a way of understanding community relations. It's a source of resilience and strength. That is why 25 years ago, we decided to use this word to fund an organization that will honor the spirit of the collective work. Minga is a nonprofit organization that promotes social justice and human dignity, primarily with women and their families in the rural communities of the Amazon. We have our roots in the Amazon and extends out from there to work throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. Our radio program. Minga Peru began with the only means, when the only means of transportation in that part of the Amazon was the river. And the only way to massively reach women was through the use of radio. That is why in 1997, we launched the first edition of Bienvenida Salud, which means welcome health in Spanish. Our education radio program, which main goal is to reach women and their families in the most remote communities, delivering messages about equity, prevention of violence, health, rights, care of the environment, among other topics, and all these messages to which the population did not have enough exposure. But since the beginning, we do not wanted to just reach the audiences. But even more importantly, we wanted to help the listeners become active producers of a collective message. So we encourage them to send us letters telling us about what are their main concerns, what are their dreams for themselves and their families, so they can improve their lives. We insist that it did not matter if they had good calligraphy or grammar, because what really mattered was what they have to communicate, because they have valuable information and knowledge. Because in many ways, for us in Minga, they are the experts. The letters began to arrive, mainly sent by women, and for many of them, it was the first time they wrote a letter. Some were written by their children when they didn't know how to write. The letters came on paper, on tree bark, and even on pumpkins. It was, and still is, amazing and powerful to see so many women in their small canoes waiting for the big lanchas, these big boats to come, to give them their letters that will take like a week sometimes through the river to get to the Quitos port, where somebody from Minga will take it, bring it to the office, and make it part of the radio scripts. Today, Bienvenida Salud has been on the air for 25 years. 45,000 letters have given shape to 1,700 episodes of Bienvenida Salud in Spanish and also in indigenous languages, reaching more than 150,000 listeners in the most remote and isolated communities in the Amazon. Bienvenida Salud, it's broadcasted by radio stations, loudspeakers in communities, ports, boats, and schools. A few months after we launched Bienvenida Salud, we realized that there were some women who were writing many letters a month, who were reflecting deeply on what they heard on the radio program and sincerely were looking for a change. So we invite them to join our training and leadership program, where women from different communities and ages participate in workshops for a deeper understanding of the same topics they heard on the radio program. Nowadays, there are more than 1,200 women trained in 43 communities who have become community promoters, and they are reinforcing the radio messages and sharing what they learn with their local networks of women. A year after that, after training the community promoters, we were having an evaluating gathering, and we were discussing with the community promoters about the future of this program. And I will always remember one of them standing up in front of me and saying, you know, Eliana, now I know that violence is wrong. And I am strong enough to do not tolerate it. But what do I do with my niece, who's 3 months pregnant and is beaten every night by her husband? I talk to the authority in the community, but nothing happens. They all arrange, you know, with a dozen of beers. And because in Minga, we believe that people have the answers to their own problems, I asked her back, so what do you think we should be doing? And she said, we need to generate money. And I said, how? Because we don't pay community promoters. And she said, we need to do fish farms, agroforestry models, chicken poultry models, and chacras agroforestales, agroforestry farms, to get some money. So this is how we started the third component of our institutional model, which includes 3 components. The first one is the strategic use of communications. The second one is the leadership training of women. And the third one is the generation of income and sustainable management of natural resources projects. So you see, so women listen to the radio program, they send their letters, then they become leaders, and after an empowering process, they start with generating their own resources. As you can see, it has been them, the women, and the communities who have shaped this model, and that our role as an institution has been to listen, to respect, and to support. What are the impacts of this model after 25 years? Studies have shown that in the communities where Minga works, men and women now recognize that women have rights, that women have become empowered, and with the development of their self-confidence, they have actively participated in the public sphere, helping make community decisions and being elected as local authorities for the first time. From their public position, women have promoted productive agroforestry, educational, and health projects. In addition to this, where the model is applied, there is a trend that 5 things. Family and gender-based violence decreases. There are fewer teenagers, girls becoming pregnant. There are more girls attending to school. There is breast and cervical cancer cases being detected earlier. And the use of HIV/AIDS prevention practices has increased. After 15 years doing that, we become more specialized on the use of communications for social change strategies, no? And a point of reference for many social organizations, friends, who frequently come to us asking for some advice. And it became very clear to us that many of these amazing, brave, courageous, efficient organizations doing incredible work on the field they could be much more impactful if they improve their communications in a strategic way. That's why we started the Institutional Strengthening in Strategic Communications Program, FICE, or FICE for its name in Spanish, as a way to respond to this urgency and this need. And to date, we have trained more than 150 organizations in more than 14 countries in the region. What's the impact of FICE? After working with FICE, organizations report that they reach a wider and more diverse audience, that they use their communication resources more effectively, and that they generate more local and international alliances, mobilizing more resources and becoming more sustainable. FICE also facilitates learning virtual communities with organizations throughout Latin America that allowed them to build regional visions of collective challenges such as migration. So to end this, as we believe in the power of Minga, the collective work, we would love to mingar with these friends of alumni of Harvard and all attending to this forum. So we invite you to mingle with us. How? By attending to our Minga learning sessions. These are 60-minute sessions where we share what we learn, and you have the chance also to talk to people in the communities, thanks to the magic of Zoom and the translation, simultaneous translation. You can also visit us. You can come to the Amazon through the Minga Tour program and have an experience of learning about empowerment from the women in one of the most beautiful places in the planet. You can also volunteer with us. We need help. We need help for the creation of content for social media and videos. We need help with the preparation of business plans. We need help for more research and writing papers. And finally, spreading the word on what we are doing. And if you want, help us support the programs, being part of Friends of Minga Peru, and making your contribution through CAF America. And we are letting you there the contact information, also our contact information. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you both. Thank you both so much. Stephen, how can our attendees and listeners help support your organization and its important work? Oh, you're on mute. Don't talk yet. Don't. Unmute yourself and let us know.
I'm sorry, I wasn't hearing you.
Yeah, we can hear you now. So, Stephen, how can our attendees and listeners help support your organization and its important work?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, we can always use financial support. That's a primary. Just to expand, keep expanding our services. We used to have a volunteer program in Venezuela and people came down. It was a wonderful experience. But right now, we don't consider Venezuela really to be safe or stable enough to support that. But we're looking forward to a time, maybe soon, when we can resume the volunteer program. Other kinds of volunteer work might include helping us on social media, everything we can do, kind of like Ileana is saying, to expand our outreach, to reach more people and show people the immense need that these women, like Ileana's populations that she's serving and the women in Venezuela that we are serving, the circumstances they're under and the kind of support they really need.
I'm gonna share Facebook page as well as the website in the chat. And I'd like to really thank our presenters today and remind you that this 20-minute session is over. You can stay in this room if you'd like. We're gonna start again. And if you want to choose another breakout room, you can leave this session and go back to Zoom events and choose another room to join. Thank you all. So there will be another session after this one, and which each organization will present during both sessions. So you will have the opportunity to hear multiple presentations. So feel free to leave this room and go to another breakout room on Zoom events.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you for listening in. All right. So I'm just gonna check with all right. So we can also to remind everybody that we can take some questions if we'd like. And in the meantime, now we can, we're just waiting. Hi, Brendan. We're just waiting for new participants to join. We just ended the first session. Welcome, everybody. I think people will join maybe in another minute or so. So we're going to hear from this group of speakers again. And should we go in should we change order? Should we go in the same order? What do you think, Stephen, Eliana? Okay, so same order. We'll do the same order then. All right, so we may have some new people in the room, and thank you everybody for joining us today. So this would be the second session of today's event, and we're going to start with the first organization and first representative. Stephen, go ahead.
Okay, let me get set up here. Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Stephen Bloomstein, and I'm the president of the Turimiquire Foundation in Venezuela, which offers community-based family planning and rural education and development services to the low-income populations of northeastern Venezuela. Many of you may already have heard that Venezuela is a country experiencing it's sort of an ongoing humanitarian crisis, and a lot of basic reproductive and other health services simply aren't available. So I'm going to go to slides now because I think it's the best way to tell our story. Let me go here. So our story is unusual in the sense that we began as a small group of college-educated, non-professional North Americans who, in the spirit of the 1960s, we moved to Venezuela, actually in the early 1970s, to practice tropical fruit farming and to live close to nature, which we did, but of course we soon became very involved with the poor rural populations with whom we lived and worked. Now, in those days, rural campesino women from the countryside, frequently had up to 8 living children by the time they were 30 years old. And they often started as young as 14 or even 12 years old, giving birth and including along the way several miscarriages or infant deaths in the process. There were high levels of maternal infant morbidity and mortality, and there still are. That's a fact of life. Women would often go for years, literally years, without having a menstrual period, just one pregnancy following another. It was what we called a reproductive treadmill, and it engendered a kind of vicious circle of poverty that nobody could break out of. So when we asked these families what we could do to help, the women overwhelmingly asked us for family planning for themselves and for their daughters. Grandmothers asked for their daughters and their granddaughters. They were very clear that this was the most urgent and empowering assistance that we could offer them. So we did. We started to help out of our own pocket, out of our own resources. But then our friend and neighbor, Brunilde, died in 1994 from postpartum hemorrhaging after giving birth to her 7th child at the age of 31 in a small mud hut 2 hours walking from the nearest road. And she bled out while being carried down rocky foot trails and across mountain rivers in a blood-drenched hammock in a desperate attempt to get her to the road and then to the local hospital in time to save her life. She died, and her newborn died shortly thereafter. And so that became our wake-up call, that we had to do something more. And so we started our foundation. Now, once we got going and began to offer family planning, the in our valley, in our neighboring valleys, and we quickly learned a tremendous demand for this. All by word by mouth, we were soon swamped. And we also learned a second lesson very quickly, that once women and families gain control of their fertility, they immediately turn to education as the next step in improving their lives. Parents who might very well be illiterate themselves are passionate about giving their children the best possible future through schooling. They know that education is the key to their children's future and to developing their community. So that is how we evolved what we call our recipe for a thriving community, which has 4 very specific steps. First, family planning. First, offer women and men the ability to control their fertility. Then education. Follow right up with families, offering families real educational opportunities for their children. Then build community, support infrastructure development and sustainable livelihood. And finally, humanitarian aid for the poorest of the poor, the people who fall through the cracks. Now, here we're showing some of our results really through the year 2022, through last year. We have been able to offer over 71,000 women and their families safe, reliable family planning. That amounts to almost 240,000 couple years of protection, which is the metric by which USAID measures family planning achievement. We've offered to over 80,600 participants in reproductive health workshops, basically community-based sex ed in which young people can learn about their sexuality and their reproductive health. And we expanded our primary care, basic primary health care, to include 6,800 medical services, ranging from medical consults to surgeries to diagnoses, the full range, as the situation in Venezuela continues to deteriorate. We also supported hundreds of high school students to graduate from high school, and many going on, or some going on to college with the foundation support. Plus a bunch of other activities, which we don't have time to really go into right now, involving agriculture, solar energy, and so forth. So how do we do all this on a shoestring budget? Well, we don't build new infrastructure. We partner with existing public and private facilities, with anyone who's willing to work with us. Our service team is 100% Venezuelan, on the ground, local, and 95% women, ranging from medical professionals, doctors, nurses, to sociologists, social workers, educators, to campesinos, even illiterate campesinos in the field. Everyone helps out. And social marketing, we offer all our services at highly subsidized prices, but no one is turned away if we can possibly help. If you can't pay, we find a way to help anyway. So we'd like to highlight Marcella here, Marcella in pink, shown with her extended campesina family. This picture is taken several hours from the nearest road. She's one of our longest time and most beloved staff. Started as one of our very first high school scholarship students, one of our very first college graduates, now a public school teacher who coordinates our education and family planning programs. She's an example of empowerment, and also empowerment across generations, as her whole family has risen with her. It's important to say that there are still millions and millions of women on the planet, in the world, and hundreds of thousands of women in Venezuela and in many Latin American countries who still do not have access to basic family planning and reproductive health, and cannot control their fertility in what is often really a patriarchal environment. So this is really a human rights issue, a question of human freedom, of empowering people to freely decide their own reproductive destiny. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. It's, on the one hand, it's so exciting to hear about your accomplishments, and thank you so much for sharing those with us. And on the other hand, it's just so painful to hear about the challenges of working with local governments and just all the struggles. So I have so many questions, but I'll wait a little bit till asking them. And if anybody in the room has questions, please feel free to, for Stephen or for Eliana, who's going to present next, please feel free to put them in the chat or send me direct message or whatever you prefer. And Eliana, please begin your presentation now. Thank you.
Gracias, Ana, and gracias, Stephen, too. We want to thank you again, GlobalWe Expo organizers, for having us here. It's a real honor to speak on behalf of the brave, courageous women from the Amazon. So, what is Minga? Minga is a Quechua word for an Andean practice that is more than 3,000 years old. Minga is when all members of a community come together to do collective work, such as building bridges and storing seeds for the winter. In the Mingas, everyone participates and everyone benefits. Minga is, for us, is a way of understanding community relations, is a source of strength and a source of resilience. That is why 25 years ago, we decided to use this word to found an organization that will honor the spirit of collective work. Minga is a nonprofit organization that promotes social justice and human dignity, primarily from women and their families in rural communities in the Amazon. We have our roots in the Amazon and extend out from there to work throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. Minga Peru began when the only means of transportation in this part of the Amazon was the river, and the only way to massively reach women was through the radio. That is why in 1997, we launched the first edition of Bienvenida Salud, Welcome Health, our educational radio program, which main goal is to reach women and their families in the most remote communities, delivering messages about equality, health, prevention of violence, care of the environment, among other topics, all messages to which this population did not have enough exposure. We do not want to reach only the audience, but more importantly, we wanted to help the listeners become active producers of a collective message. That is why we encourage them to send us letters, telling us about their concerns, about what they wanted to learn and how they would love to change things in the community, in their lives, in the community, in their families. We insist that it did not matter if they had good calligraphy or grammar, because what really mattered was that they communicate their ideas, because for us, in many ways, they are the experts. The letters began to arrive, mainly sent by women who were writing a letter for the first time in their life. Some were written by their children when they didn't know how to write. The letters came on paper, on tree barks, and even on pumpkins. It was, and still is, amazing and beautiful and powerful to see women in their small canoes waiting for the big boats to come so they can give their letters. And then these letters take like sometimes a week before they come to the port, and somebody from our team picks it up and uses it as part of a radio program. Today, Bienvenida Salud has been on the air for 25 years. 45,000 letters have been given shape to 1,700 episodes of Bienvenida Salud in Spanish and indigenous languages, reaching more than 150,000 listeners in the most remote communities of the Amazon. Bienvenida Salud is broadcasted by radio stations, loudspeakers in the communities, ports, boats, and schools. After a few months from having launched Bienvenida Salud, we realized that there were some women who were sending many letters a month, reflecting very deeply on what they heard on the radio and sincerely looking for a change. So we invite them to join us and be part of the training and leadership program where women from different communities and ages participate in workshops for a deeper understanding of the same topics they have heard on the radio. Nowadays, there are more than 1,200 women trained in 43 communities who have become community promoters, reinforcing radio messages and sharing what they have learned with their local networks. And after a year launching this program, we were having an evaluating meeting where we were discussing with the community promoters about the future of this program. And I remember that one of them stood up in front of me and told me, you know what, Eliana, now I know violence is wrong, and I'm strong enough to not tolerate it. But what do I do with my niece, who's 3 months pregnant and is beaten every night by her husband? I have talked to the authority in the community, but nothing happens. It's all settled with a dozen of beers. So as in Minga, we believe that the people have the answers to their problems. I asked her back, what do you think we should be doing? And she said, we need to do income generating, like fish farms, agroforestry farms, chicken poultry models, stuff that usually men do. We should be doing that so we can have the money to pay for the gasoline and take and put a formal complaint in a closed city. So this is how we started the third component of our institutional model, which is the income generating and natural resource management component. So this is the model we work. It's radio plus leadership plus income generating and natural resource management initiatives. As you can see, it has been the women and communities who have shaped this model, and that our role has been to listen, to respect, and support. But what's the impact of this work? Studies have shown that in the communities where Minga work, men and women now recognize that women have rights. Women have become empowered, and with the development of their self-esteem, they now actively participate in the public sphere, help make community decisions, and are being elected as local authorities. And finally, from their public position, women are promoting productive agroforestry, educational, and health projects. 5 things. Where the model is applied, there is a trend that 1, family and gender-based violence decrease. There are fewer teenagers, girls becoming pregnant. There are more girls attending to school. Breast and cervical cancer cases are being detected earlier, and the use of HIV/AIDS prevention practices has increased. 15 years later, after doing this model, we became more and more specialized about the use of communication for social change, and we become like a point of reference for many organizations, grassroots and social organizations here in Peru and other countries. So they frequently asked for our advice, and it became very clear to us that many of them doing an amazing, impactful work could have a greater impact if they improve their communications, making them more strategic. For this reason, 10 years ago, we started the Institutional Strengthening in Strategic Communications program, FICE for its name in Spanish, as a way to respond to this urgent need. And today, we have trained more than 150 organizations in more than 14 countries. After working with FICE, organizations have reported that they reach a wider and diverse audience, they use their communications resources more effectively, and they generate more local and international alliances, mobilizing more resources and becoming more sustainable. FICE also facilitates learning virtual communities with organizations throughout the region that allowed us to build a regional vision of collective challenges such as migration. So, since we believe in the power of Minga, we would love to mingar with the alumni and also with the people attending to this meeting. And so how can you help? How can you get involved? Well, by attending to our Minga learning sessions, which are 60-minute Zoom gatherings where we share lessons about what we are doing, and you have the chance to speak directly to people from communities with the magic of the Zoom and also the simultaneous translation. Or you can also visit us. You can come to the Amazon through our Minga Tour program, which is an experience to learn about empowerment from women in one of the most beautiful places in the planet. You can also volunteer with us. We need support for the creation of content for social media, videos, with the preparation of business plans, with doing some research and writing papers, and spreading the word of what we are doing, of what the women are doing, or becoming friends of Minga Peru by contributing through CAF America. And we are leaving you there the link. You can also write us if you would like to support in any way you can. Muchas gracias.
Stephen, why don't you share with us opportunities to be involved with Turimiquire Foundation, and also let us know if you're open to trying to replicate your model in other places, and collaborating with other organizations in the region. Stephen, you're mute. Yeah.
There I am. Well, thanks for that invitation. We feel that the model we have is very replicable in certain circumstances where countries already have sufficient public and private infrastructure, which has what's very much the case with Venezuela before they entered into a kind of a crisis mode over the last several decades. So that model is very replicable, and we would be eager and happy to share it with other interested parties. We are working with different organizations that are beginning to introduce other aspects of reproductive health. And so we're trying to expand a little bit what our framework is going to be in Venezuela. And we do have contact with other, let's say, family planning organizations mostly in Latin America, which is very inspiring. What people can do, again, is support us financially. Every cent is very well spent and very immediately spent to achieve our goals. And I think because we cannot really offer a volunteer program right now, because Venezuela is really not safe or stable enough to invite people to come down. Although I do want to say that when we did have a volunteer program, which ended in the early 2000s, it was very successful. People really enjoyed their experience with us. And Venezuela is a very hospitable place. I think maybe people can help us with social media content. Again, what I said with Eliana, that we're looking for content. We're looking to spread this message about the situation that women in lesser developed countries, rural women, isolated women, women in remote places who do not have much contact, who do not have much support, how we can build a stronger network to reach them and help them, and help their families. Because as soon as you educate and empower the women, the men come along and their whole families benefit. The children first and foremost.
On that note, I think we can bring some of these points to networking session. And also, Eliana and Stephen, I really would like to actually organize, maybe over summer, a meeting with organizations in the region about communication and strategic communication, and just to share your experience. I think other organizations now present in this room would be very interested, and I thank you all and participants who joined us. And now we click leave this meeting and we go to a networking room for the last final round of networking for our expo and then some closing. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Gracias, Ana. Ciao, Steven.
Gracias.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.